Thank God it's Friday. It's time to do Friday business. It's going to take us 55 minutes around the world of business. And here's what we have prepared for you today. If you've been asking what's been happening with mobile banking apps in Nigeria, you may get the answer today on the program. And for the third time this year, Egypt is raising the prices of gasoline, diesel, and petrol. Niger is banning grain exports to many countries except Burkina Faso and Mali. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ini John Mekwa. We start from the global space with oil prices. Crude oil features steadied on Friday after strong U.S. retail sales data, but China's economic indicators remain mixed, and prices were headed for their biggest weekly loss in more than a month on concerns about demand. Take a look at the numbers now. We see Brent gaining 8 cents, not so much, still keeping it within the $74 range, which has been the case for most of this week. $74.53 a barrel, that's 0.1% up, while WTI is 0.2% up, but still around $70.82. So a bit of calm on the side of the Middle East, the tension in the Middle East, Israel and Iran. But now we see China demand moving the market, as well as the just released U.S. retail sales, which increased slightly more than expected for September. And in September, and investors now are pricing in 92% chance for a Federal Reserve rate cut in November, which is the next sitting. And here in Nigeria, in that space, the average retail price for refilling a 5-kilogram cylinder of liquefied petroleum gas, that's cooking gas, went up by 4.19% on a month-on-month basis from 6,430 recorded in August to 6,699 naira 63 kobo in September. On a year-on-year basis, this increased by 59.90, that's from 4,189 naira 96 kobo in September 2023. Looking at state profile, Rivers recorded the highest average price for refilling 5 kg cylinder of cooking gas with 7,285 naira 71 kobo, followed by Gombe and then Borno State. On the other hand, Kebbi had the lowest price with 5,950 naira, followed by Kano and Benue States, respectively. Look at metals now for this afternoon. It's gold has hit a new high. It breached the 2,700 per ounce level for the very first time ever. If you're an investor in gold, there's a smiling period for you as U.S. election jitters and simmering Middle East tensions boost safe haven demand, while a looser money poetry environment also adds to that. So look at the price. Yesterday at this time, we're talking about 2,660. Today, it's gone beyond 2,700, the very first time ever for spot gold. Also, U.S. gold following that, $2,722, and that's up 0.5%. These are new highs for these metals. Let's see if other metals also followed suit. Spot silver went up also 0.5%. That's $1.92 per ounce. Platinum was up. Everybody seems to be going up 0.5% because platinum is also up 0.5%. $996.85. Palladium went up more than that. 0.7% to $1,049.25. So gold is expected to trade within the range of 2,500 and 2,800 in the coming months as prices receive support from the Fed cut as expected in their next meeting. Also, of course, the geopolitical tension, even though it's calm now, but investors are still very wary about what could happen in that space. Now, in Nigeria, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry is advocating the adoption of compressed natural gas for industrialization. A former group managing director of Dangote Cement, Not Uwevo, enumerates the benefits of this adoption and says it goes beyond economical. He was speaking at an address on the State of the Nation organized by the Chamber in Lagos.
Dangote just bought 1,000 CNG trucks, and it's a beginning. I don't know how CNG will be in the private cars, in the small cars, but definitely when you talk about trucks, transport, heavy vehicle, heavy equipment, CNG is there and is very, very good. Some people don't like it, like the drivers, because it's not so easy to take CNG out of the truck. One thing is environmental, another thing is practical and economical. Nigeria has so much gas and it should be utilized. This energy can also be used for creating more electric power. And I think, well, in my country, Norway, we have about 90% of the cars now sold are electric cars. This would also be good for Nigeria. Being CNG, being electric, being whatever it is, we need energy.
Meanwhile, oil and gas expert Dr. Wisdom Enang believes that the reduction in premium motor spirit import as petrol into Nigeria because of the operations of Dangote refinery is a positive development. However, the benefit will be lost because of cross-border smuggling of the product. As a guest on Business Morning earlier today, is asking the government to adopt strategies to deter this illegal activity.
Energy security is very important. It's the basis for even the functionality of our society today. So it's very important. And then when you go from the predict standpoint, you're able to get that data. You're able to mine the data and detect. So, for example, if a truck is out, maybe going on the road and it stops for an hour, is it because the truck has broken down, or is it because there's actually an active move to evacuate some of the inventory there for smuggling purposes? And then you go to the respond. That's where you have the human interface. That's where people begin to, after looking at data, what do we need to do? Do we get in touch with the driver? Is there a secondary protocol that would check what the primary protocol had done and make sure, or detected, and make sure that everything is fine? And then there's the recover approach. When you're talking about recover, you're talking about making sure that you send a signal to people that this is not acceptable. That starts with naming and shaming. That starts with making sure that even when they're brought to justice, that justice actually prevails. And that's speaking directly to our judiciary.
All right, so now let's leave the oil and gas and energy for some time and talk about something you may have been experiencing recently with your financial institution. The banking apps have not been so friendly in the coming days, but fair enough, we've had notifications and warnings from some of the banks preparing their customers that they were having new core banking apps and some new things were expected. But in many cases, we've seen beyond the time given for the warning that monies are still being held even up till now. So let's talk about, try to understand the technicality of that with Bobola Ojo Ami. He is the head of marketing at MIM Finance, head of marketing. Thank you so much, Bobola, for your time. Have you experienced this in recent times, talking about using any of the mobile apps?
Absolutely, I have. I mean, in the past 1 week, I have one of my main bank accounts, which I have not been able to operate at all. So I do absolutely understand what the experience has been for most of us Nigerians in the past 1 month.
So help us to understand the technicalities, what's really going on. We know they told us they're supposed to move to new applications that are supposed to make them more efficient and all of that. And but it's even taken longer than they told us it would be.
Absolutely, and that's the thing with migrations between infrastructure for establishments as large as banks, right? And it also brings to bear the reality that banks are very, very integral to the economy in every sense. You need to be able to move money one way or another. And that's the entire basis behind why the banks are doing what they're doing. They have to improve their infrastructure. They have to strengthen their systems and make sure that they can serve their customers efficiently. Now, the reality with migration, like I said earlier on, is you can never be absolutely prepared, right? The average migration for an entity as large as a bank can take between 1 year to 6 months, right? On average, right? The implementation process is one that is very, very daunting, and I'll give reasons why it's that way. They have trillions of data, in transactions that they have to migrate to this new system that is different from what they were using before. They have, millions of customers who they're also migrating. They are trying to manage transactions in real time across 2 different systems. They are having to train their thousands of staff across, those 2 different systems. It's a very, very rigorous process behind it. Now, I think the area that is very important for the banks is to also ensure that they are very, very, very careful with how they communicate with customers and they carry them along, right? That's the part that is really, really important because they can't get it right, absolutely. And that's why communicating to the customers, letting them know this is where we are at right now. In the next couple of days, this is what we expect. If it changes, they communicate on time, and customers will have a little bit more confidence in what the experience is meant to be for them at the end of the entire process.
So, but what can we expect? Why should we pay this price to start with? What can we expect on the other side of this migration?
I believe there are about 3 things that are most important, right, that the banks are indirectly promising to their customers. One is that they will to offer a much more efficient service. When I say efficient service in this case, that cuts across with speed of transacting, cost of transacting as well, right, among several areas. You also have their own internal operational efficiency, areas of efficiency, internally across their operations, where they are able to also save costs, right, across board. This in turn will allow them to be able to do more for their customers, right? And then I think last and most important is the security, right? Data security, the security of customers' transactions. And I think I would also tie that. I'll go to the first point I mentioned when I was talking about operational efficiency. Right. By a large margin, Nigerian customers have had one issue or the other with their banking apps. Those inefficiencies are pretty much one of the things that they want to take away. Some of these banks have had their infrastructure for a couple of years now. They need to move to the new systems that allow them to do a lot more, be much more efficient across board, and serve their customers better. So I think that is what we should expect at the end of the tunnel, if I may. Or the
Yeah,
end of
but
the
I mean,
episode.
the thing is, you said it might take about 6 months or so, normally migration and infrastructure, when you look at the quantum of data and transactions that they will have to move. So I wonder what happens in between, because even as we speak, I'm sure you head to any major bank now, go to their customer service area, and it's crowded because there are lots of complaints and, transactions that cannot be concluded and all of that. So I wonder how they can handle such efficiently, to still keep the customers' sentiments positive.
Absolutely. So there are 2 ways to look at this. For banks that are currently in between this experience right now, the best thing they need to do, like I said, is accurately communicate to the customer. This is what we're experiencing right now. This is what the outcome is going to be, right, within this period of time. That gives customer clarity. Clarity is really what is most important. The average person has been using their bank for more than 10 years or more, right? And they probably don't intend to change. They trust that bank. If the banks want those trusts, to be continually maintained, they need to communicate, right, accurately to say, this is exactly what is going on. This is what you can do in the interim. These are the stopgaps we've created. I'll give an example. I was trying to transact yesterday with a particular commercial bank. Permit me not to mention
Yes,
it.
please.
But I spoke to my account officer instead, right, because I couldn't use the platform, and he was able to enable the transaction on my behalf. Now, not all Nigerians have access to their account officers, right, which is where communicating effectively to let customers know this is what you can do at this point in time. This is what you can do at this point in time. This is what we've created as stopgaps for this type of issues. Do they have FAQs for the entirety of that migration period? Even after the migration is done, have they designed things in a way whereby customers can talk to customer care representatives, and the customer care representative person knows exactly what to say without fear that they're probably going to pass wrong information or the information is going to change. Now, you spoke about, you made reference to the migration timeline I spoke about earlier on. Now, that 6 months to 1 year is the preliminary stage, where they are preparing before the migration itself even happens. They can't be 100% prepared because it's sort of more a testing experience. The real migration happens when they start the process and they then try to move data between the old system to the new system. Within the preliminary stage, training happens, infrastructure setup happens where they need to change servers and things like that. But the actual migration process is where it gets crazy. I think I can mention names here. Sterling Bank had their experience; they did beautifully well on the basis that they probably built their own infrastructure in-house because it's an indigenous infrastructure called CBAS. You also have a few other banks who are in the process. Again, I won't mention names. But like I said, communicating effectively to the customer.
Are they doing that now?
To the best of my knowledge, I think they are trying, but a lot more they can do.
Because I've only seen like one notification from each of those banks, the major ones that are embarking on this migration, telling customers, oh, we're going to be off, or you cannot access the app between this time and this time. And for a lot of them, the time they gave has elapsed, and customers are still facing those hitches. And I don't think I've seen any other communication after that.
Yes, absolutely, which again goes to my point behind communication. This is exactly why. This is what tells the customer that I am beloved. You are paying attention to me as a customer, and you are doing this because of me. I care to you as a bank, right? So like I said, for banks who are in the thick of it right now, they need to communicate, right? To give customers the confidence they need. And this is a recommendation that is important across board. We also have a lot of indigenous digital banks these days who from the very onset, they already built their infrastructure as such to be able to serve the Nigerian customer digitally. For most of our commercial banks, their model of operation is different. They are traditional, and then they are also, trying to move their entire business model into the digital side of things. So the recommendation will also be for the average Nigerian to explore some of the indigenous digital banks that exist, from Money Points. These are banks
You're
that
mentioning names.
if I may, those type of institutions, they can also rely on them in this instance. And
I think a lot of Nigerians are already moving that way, but I mean, it will obviously be to the detriment of the major banks. And then there'll also come the fear of how much can the digital banks, also handle. I remember the other time when we had the new currency issue and a lot of Nigerians moved to the way of the digital banks. It got to a level that it was really heavy for them to handle the transactions and all of that. So we actually need all hands to be on deck. And I do wish that the banks will communicate more, to keep the confidence of their customers, which is very important. But it seems in this part of the world, we like to hoard information. But thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Bobola Ojoami, for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right, now let's take a break. When we come back, we have a related conversation, the issue of cybersecurity. Some very worrying numbers released recently about cybersecurity threats. We'll delve into that after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Watching Business Incorporated on Channels Television. Now, the Nigerian Central Securities Clearing System, that's the CSCS, they've revealed that businesses operating in Nigeria encounter an alarming average of 2,500 cyber attacks every week, highlighting the significant cybersecurity challenges that companies face in an increasingly digital landscape, which should be welcomed, the movement to the landscape. But it also notes that cybercrime is projected to cost global economy about 10.5 trillion naira this year. So it's not just the Nigerian thing, but what can Nigeria do to protect itself and protect its businesses? Let's find out with Paul Opara. Paul Opara is right here in the studio. He's the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Sowebatu. Good morning, Paul. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I was here in the morning, so I
okay,
guess
it's been a long day.
I'm in the morning, in the morning mood. But so
right.
having this number, 2,500,
Scary.
it's scary every week, and this is reality. In fact, mostly it's safe to say this is underestimated or underreported.
Yeah, I think that's probably what they can find out at the moment. But it's the devil is always in the details, so it's probably way more than that.
So how do these cyber attacks come? Do they infiltrate bank apps? Do they go to, how does it really, what does it look like, or what does it come across as?
Yeah, so I think what should be interesting is to say, how can we actually address this? Because before I address that, because we're facing like a very serious challenges right now in Nigeria, because like you rightly said, the numbers are increasing, and the scary part is this: we do not have enough resources on ground to even combat that, and that is what is even more scary. So,
what kind of resources do we need?
People, competencies around to be able to combat this.
Is it because of the JAPA?
Yeah, like the JAPA syndrome is real. Most of all the competent people are like abroad. Most of them are moving to Canada or the US or wherever they can find something. So, so for me, that's actually a big concern, which is what led me and my team just on Secure and Sowebatu AB, which is we came together and we decided, okay, how do we address this?
No, I think what we should actually talk about should be, what tips can we give businesses and individuals to protect themselves in the midst of the rising cyber attacks?
Okay, there are you are only as secure as your weakest link. We can start with some kind of a security awareness training and helping different employees in an organization to be able to be aware of what is actually happening within the organization. So when it comes to majority of the issues that we have in companies today are due to lack of security awareness. We actually believe that if we are able to train people and bring them together and give them enough information, they should be able to stand against any cyber attacks.
So by now, tips such as, don't use easily cracked password, don't use your name as your password. Those information have been around. How useful are some of those simple tips?
Yeah, they're still very valuable. Sometimes we actually we address things that are more complicated instead of obeying and adhering to things that are quite simple. Something like don't use a plain a simple password. What happened? How do you undo your card? I think that's something that is very on the rise now. On my way to the studio here, I was reading, one of my friends that sent me a message that says, "Oh, my card got compromised," and getting compromised. My card was stolen, and even when I called the bank, they were still able to withdraw my money from my account. So what can you do in that process to be able to safeguard that even when you are compromised, even when your card gets stolen, you are still able to protect yourself? So what are the simple and non-complicated stuff that you can do to be able to keep your asset? that is being aware of, like how should you put your card in your there are different wallets today where you get to protect your card informations and you get to put those things there. So there are simple things like not using a simple password, not answering all kind of questions when you get called in Nigeria, when you get called on the phone. So there are things in place to be able to handle that.
Then there's the one that, phones are stolen and then, bank apps are accessed. But I know there's some steps that they say you can take. Is that still useful?
Yeah. So the one that is very paramount now is the WhatsApp incident that's been happening, and I discovered that most people do not really have multi-factor authentication in place. So what I always suggest is this. I mean, so many of us that have WhatsApp is how we actually conduct most of our businesses today. Things like using multi-factor authentication, which is very simple to set up. Basically, what you do is this: you make sure that apart from your regular username and password, there are other devices that you can use, that you can put in place to be able to identify yourself. So put your other phone numbers in place so that when it's compromised, you have an alternative to be able to restore it. But that being said, because there are cases now where you actually do have multi-factor authentication put in place, but you still get compromised. And how does that happen? That happens through what we call the social engineering. How does social engineering work? People use things that you know around you to get to you. Things like majority of us, when we're on the phone, we are always we talk, we are not very conversant about our environment, and we just talk really loud. And by you talking really loud, I mean, people around you can pick what you're saying and then call you in turn. I mean, there are a bunch of people that have received messages where they call them and they just impersonate that your sister is sick, your sister wants you to send money right now. What do you do when you're in such a situation? What you do is pretty simple. Don't act with impulses. Don't just go ahead and start to. For me, although I'm a cybersecurity specialist, I'm still human. So when things like that happen, what do? I take a 5-minute break. I don't respond to you. Just directly when you call me and ask and bring up those kind of stuff. Try to take a pause and say, okay, can I get back to you? Then I try to reach whoever it is that they are trying to impersonate. Because in the street of Lagos, the hustling and bustling, you're talking, you don't know who is around you. Then they gather it. It's called reconnaissance, where they gather all the information they know, and then they attack you with it. So it is not just technical. I mean, technical can only solve some stuff, but most of all the attacks that have been perpetrated are through social engineering, just social engineering. I mean, and this has compromised big, high, and mighty. Because there's some soft parts in every one of us as human. When someone mention and tell you that your mother in the village is sick and they would like you to send money right now, and you should click a code that appears on your phone. So if you get too emotional about that, and then you click that code, then things start to happen. So I always tell people, the bad guys are not that powerful if you don't give them the room to do that. I have Yoruba upbringing, so I don't know. I'm always using the Yoruba proverb like "kokoro to n jefo, therefore lower." So meaning the insects. The things around you. If the enemy outside can't get you, I'm just paraphrasing now. If the enemy inside cannot get you, it's difficult for the enemy outside to get you. So we translate that to technology.
Charity begins at home.
It begins at home. So,
all right. Thank you for those tips, Paul Okarachi, Executive Officer and Managing Director of Webatu, for those cybersecurity tips. Let's be more conscious, more security conscious, I guess. That's the bottom line of that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right. Now it's time to head to the markets and see what intraday numbers look like at this time. But I guess that'll be after. Okay, yeah, we can do the markets now to see what's going on. We do know that for the NGX, it's been some negative sentiment going on right there. But let's see we lost that 98,000. I guess that comes with the losing of the steam from Aradel. After Aradel, then the markets went down again to where Aradel brought it. But we still have the market cap, which should be more, after Aradel has added to it. So, but it's just profit taking. That's it. 0.59% for Nigeria, 97,498.50. South Africa has taken the shine off the NGX, so it's now at 87 from 86, where it was the last time we were here, 87,283.94, almost 1% in the green at intraday. We see other markets, Egypt is closed, and now Nairobi's, this is from Thursday, so Egypt closed in the negative 1.31%, 30,143.86, while Nairobi Stock Exchange is closed really good. They seem to be hitting new levels every day. We'll see where the excitement ends, and then there's a bit of stability. But it's up to 113.29 after I went up more than 1% at the close of Thursday's trade. We look at other parts now, the Middle East. Two of these markets are closed on Fridays. Dubai and Abu Dhabi are the trading one. So intraday looking good at 0.30% in the green, while Abu Dhabi 0.12% for there. But the other markets are closed today. So these are Thursday's close. Tadawul more than 1% in the red, while Qatar slightly down at the close of Thursday's trade. Let's move over to the United States and see what sentiments are like in the US. It's green for Dow Jones and at 43,526. S&P also green, NASDAQ also green, green trade for futures. But let's see how Thursday's trade closed with our correspondent in Washington, Maria Bird.
The U.S. stock market had a mixed day on Thursday, as the Dow Jones had a record-setting day up at 0.37%. It is also clear that the tech industry made major rebounds. This caused many investors to have an easing on their thoughts around artificial intelligence. These chip stocks had a great day on Thursday. The NASDAQ, though, was just slightly above a flat line, closing at 0.04% up. And the S&P 500 slightly below flatline at 0.02% down. Many investors are still watching to see what will happen over the next weeks and days ahead, but artificial intelligence in the tech industry led the way on Thursday.
Artificial intelligence leading the way in many places. In Dubai, at the GITEX just concluded, GITEX, artificial intelligence is the theme, and then we see it also leading the way in the US market. Let's go to Asia now, where there was a rebound in China. Remember the previous trading session, it got chipped off as for China. So there's a rebound, but we're not yet back to where we used to be, still at 38,000, but looks close to 39. But this is the close of Friday's trade, 0.18%. Kospi is in the red, 0.59%, 2,593.82. Hang Seng, very good right there, 3.61% is what we see in the green for Hang Seng. And we know that movements in China, for instance, China's third quarter GDP, which went up 4.6% compared to the same period, and just a little bit above what economists had polled. That is driving markets there. Shanghai, yeah, is 0.42, but China is really bringing some taste in spite of the cuts in their demands, which we have seen reflect in the price of oil prices. But I mean, I guess perhaps the stimulus package, more details of that and the implementation of it might also do some work. But this is actually GDP numbers for a third quarter. And I'm sure that investors will be looking out for the next quarter to see which way of the decision they would go. All right, now let's talk air travels, and we're leaving the market now and heading to Berlin to find out what's going on there. Well, air travel is one of the biggest polluters, they say, in the world. the world is dealing with now, despite a globally willingness to rein in climate change. The number of planes in the sky is just going up. People are traveling more, and companies and governments are looking to get more revenue from the aviation sector. Is there a way to balance this? They say electrically powered planes would be the way out, but that, of course, comes with its own complication. Last Halter gives us the background gist on this. Hi, Last. Good afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Ini. So, a short answer, Lilium needs money. Developing and building these electrically powered personal air vehicles, that is actually what they're called, because for now, we're talking about small planes with just a handful of seats. Developing and building those is an expensive undertaking, and the company had asked the German government for loan guarantees, 100 million euros in total. Now, the state government of Bavaria, that is the company's home state, had signaled that it would extend such guarantees at least for 50 million euros, so half the amount, if the federal government would match that. But yesterday, news broke that Berlin wasn't willing to do so, as politicians are shying away from the risk such a guarantee would pose to taxpayers. Now, one can certainly appreciate the risk here. Lilium is facing major snags and delays. The company wanted to build 90 electrically powered planes this year, and facing major snags and delays. The company wanted to build 90 electrically powered planes this year and 325 next year. But right now, they're actually still working on what they call a demonstrator, and they're expecting to do a maiden flight at the end of next year. Still, if the company is failing, it would not only hurt Lilium itself, but it would also do tremendous damage to the image of Germany as an attractive investment and business hub.
Yeah, but what's going to happen to Lilium now, being left on its own?
Well, other than an insolvency, the company could simply leave Germany, and that is an option that has actually been discussed. It is true, after all, that Germany apparently doesn't support its businesses to the tune other governments are. Volocopter was another German company working on air taxis. Now, those looked more like helicopters, and they were also battery powered. That company had also asked the government for guarantees to keep business going. It didn't get them, and it's only thanks to some private investors that the company could actually survive, whereas other companies around the world in that particular field are getting support from their governments. There is Joby Aviation in the US, and they just signed a $131 million contract with the Pentagon, while also accepting some rumored $600 million in subsidies for a new plant. And there's Eve Air Mobility. They're also working on air taxis, and they are majority owned by Brazil's Embraer. Now, they just got 88 million from the Brazilian Development Bank. So other governments aren't so shy about supporting startups, even though obviously there's always some risk involved when you support developing technologies for the future.
All right, let's look at investor sentiment today.
Well, it's the aftermath of yesterday's interest rate cut, that one by the ECB, cutting rates by a quarter point to 3.25, was very much expected, and it brought relief to investors, with the DAX continue its upwards trend in trading in Frankfurt. And for this last trading day of the week, the question now is, will the German index finally break 20,000? I'd say no, because these big numbers often are a bit of a psychological barrier for markets. We've seen that in the past. As we're getting closer to such markers, there's some shyness. There is profit taking by those investors who can't believe that we got so high in the first place. And while there is still a lot of optimism in the market, a lot of analysts have recently said that it's time to be more careful. There's some numbers out of China that might be helping European bourses a bit more. Not a lot of news and data expected in Germany, however.
All right, Lars, thank you so much for that and for the week. Have a great weekend. Now let's come to Africa. We start from Egypt, where the country has raised prices on a wide range of fuel products. It happened today, Friday. The Petroleum Ministry made this statement, marking that this is the third of such increase this year. Prices for diesel fuel, one of the most commonly used fuel in the country, were raised by 17% to 13.50 Egyptian pounds, and then per litre from 11.50 pounds. Gasoline prices increased from 11% to 13%, depending on the grade, with 80 octane gasoline rising to 13.75 Egyptian pounds, 92 octane to 15.25 pounds, and 95 octanes to 17 pounds. Prime Minister Mustafa Bodobi said in July that prices of petroleum products will gradually increase until the end of 2025, adding that the government could no longer bear the burden of paying subsidies on fuels amid rising consumption. But still in Egypt, where the central bank there has set the maximum value for a single transaction on the Easter Pay application at 70,000 Egyptian pounds. The central bank announced on its website that the maximum limits through applications of approved service providers, as stated in Clause 314 of the regulations governing the instant payment application services InstaPay, which has renamed the National Instant Payment System, have been amended. The maximum value for daily transaction on the Instant Pay application is 120,000 Egyptian pounds, while the maximum value for monthly transactions is now 400,000 Egyptian pounds. From Egypt, we head to South Africa, where the Reserve Bank Governor Lasecha Kganyago has said that lower inflation targets will ensure that South Africans enjoy a lower inflation experience. In a lecture to university students, he said that with lower inflation target, the central bank can give South Africans better price stability. He says that there's a desire to move to lower targets in line with South Africa's peers.
We have a relatively high structural inflation, but it is not an inevitable thing and not a policy choice. But the fact is, we would have a lower inflation target like almost all our peers, and with it, lower inflation. If we achieved this, I think South Africans would enjoy the lower inflation experience, and we look back at an era of inflation generally over 5% as a period of great inconvenience and difficulty.
From South Africa to Ethiopia, where the Coffee and Tea Authority has announced a remarkable achievement in the first quarter of 2024-2025 fiscal year, generating $521.98 million from the export of 115,851 tons of coffee, tea, and spices. This performance significantly exceeds the authority's original target of £427.10 million from 83,294 tons. This success represents a 46% increase in revenue, equating to an additional $165.06 million, alongside a 69% rise in export volume, or 48,371 tons more than anticipated. In September alone, Ethiopia earned $142.51 million from 33,997.27 tons of these products, surpassing the target of $122.94 million from 24,061 tons. This achievement marks a 62% revenue increase and an 82% rise in volume of trade. We'll go to Niger now, where that country's military authority has banned rice, cereal, and other food export to all countries except fellow junta-led Burkina Faso and Mali to protect local supply. This announcement was made by the government. With the Sahel nation experiencing high inflation on certain foods, the products banned for export besides rice include legumes such as cowpea, as well as cereals like millet, sorghum, and corn. These prohibitions do not apply to exports to Mali and Burkina Faso, who are their neighbors. Although the sanctions imposed on Niger by West African bloc ECOWAS in the wake of July 2023 coup were lifted in February, they have nonetheless disrupted regular supplies to Nigerian markets where inflation remains high for products including rice. The governments of Zambia and the United States of America have signed a landmark $491.71 million Millennium Challenge Cooperation. Zambia is to Farm to Market Compact to enhance agriculture, agro-processing sectors across the country. The signing ceremony, which took place in Lusaka, with the president highlighting the importance of a grant in driving Zambia's economic recovery and transformation agenda. The debt-free grant consists of $458 million from the MCC and $33.75 million from the Zambian government. We move to Tanzania now, where they will receive close to $266 million from the International Monetary Fund after reaching a deal to secure the next tranche of funding from the lender. The IMF's executive board must approve the staff-level agreement on the extended credit facility before the East African nation can receive its next payout of about $265 million. And this will bring to $758.11 million the total amount of funding received by Tanzania from the arrangement. The IMF said Tanzania's economic fundamentals are stable, with inflation well below central bank's midterm target and the current account deficit narrowing to about 3.1% of their GDP in the fiscal year through June 30 from 6.5% a year earlier. Let's head to the crypto space now and see what's happening there. Keep our eyes on the price first and see what color Bitcoin has this afternoon. We're still on 67,000, but it's green, so recovered just a bit on 67,000 level, but it's getting closer to 68 at 0.88% is what it's gained in the last hour or so. Ethereum is also green. BNB, mostly green, is what we see on the board this afternoon. And find out if this is signs that we see Shiba Inu, Ford there. That's the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There, that's it hits an all-time high. I wonder why. Let's talk to Olumide Adeshino on this and a whole lot more. Hi. Okay. Olumide, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Great. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. What's happening to Shiba Inu? Why is the Ford so high, all-time high in this case?
I think the buying interest, appetite for risk has improved. We are moving closer to the US election, and positioning around meme coins seems to attract those that feel that they can make a lot. And in the aftermath of Dogecoin, I think Shiba Inu have taken the space. So it's unsurprising to see the coin performing that well. Having said that, you should need to understand that the market is still very volatile, and market consensus is that things can change abruptly with the US Fed's outlook less dovish as expected. So it's unsurprising to see that meme coin doing so well.
But I don't think that the sentiment or the expectation of another rate cut has started feeding into this price that we see now, do we?
I think it's, well, it depends on who you listen to. So if you look at global investors, gold is all-time high.
Yes,
you see Bitcoin oscillating above the $65,000 mark. That interestingly tells you that the appetite for even assets are strong. The US Fed's body language, based on latest speakers, has shown that they might not cut rates as the market is expecting, and that's why Bitcoin's rally is not as solid as you're seeing in gold. So I think it's a bit priced, but what will really make the differential is how the dollar responds in the following week, because the dollar right now is at 2-month high. And despite the fact that gold also is at record high, Bitcoin has been unable to shake off that narrative. So the crypto market, you see that the dominance in Bitcoin is at the highest level in more than 3 years. And that really tells you that investors are really on the sidelines. We have over $6 trillion in liquidity. Warren Buffett has about 300 billion waiting to invest in the market. So it's still a wait and see approach, despite the fact that Bitcoin is 80% away from its all-time high.
Yeah, but I'm also wondering, it seems there's a bullish sentiment going on around Bitcoin, but there's also the news that Bitcoin supply has hit a 5-year high. I wonder how we can marry both of this.
Yeah, so if you look at the market, you see that, like I said earlier, interest in Bitcoin with ETFs, inflows coming in, traditional finance, taking position, that has really helped Bitcoin. But that can be said about altcoins, particularly Ethereum. And it goes in 3 ways. First, we see that the dynamics around that market still faces regulatory uncertainty. We still see that traditional investors are really not particular about this asset. And that's why the fact that you're seeing Shiba Inu or Bitcoin really coming in, it's just been a flake across the altcoin market. So it's really a point of the fact that Bitcoin is taking its traditional space. It still remains the best performing financial asset in the last 15 years. And if you look at it in the space of 5 years, it has outdone the S&P 500. So it's really an interesting place to be. But I think things will settle after the US election. A Trump win definitely will take the crypto market to another level. A Vice President Harry coming to play with the media polls pushing her to be the likely winner will definitely mean the status quo, and the market might have some parabolic session. So, I think with all being said, it's just better to hold the assets you have right now.
Yeah, but do you see Bitcoin hitting? I mean, there's been a lot of postulation on Bitcoin hitting 70,000. Do you see that happening before the election or afterwards?
You know, one of the things I've learned about the market is that you get in trouble becoming profitable. One thing I'll tell you is that in the weeks, few days ahead, if Bitcoin can still hold the $65,000 support level, definitely breaking the all-time high will not be a problem. But with the Middle East uncertainty, the fact that global economy, apart from the US, it seems shaky, China's stimulus plans not giving the market clear signs, we might see Bitcoin testing the 50,000 mark. So it's a tale of two cities. It all depends on where the market. But I think Trump will definitely will see Bitcoin hitting the 6 figures at some point.
All right. We'll follow the market and follow the number. Thank you so much, Olumide Additional, for your time and your views this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for the week for Business Incorporated. Thank you so much for being a part of it. A fresh episode obviously starts Monday again. Business Morning, Business Incorporated is always worth your time. But over the weekend, do try to get to our YouTube channel and then try and see some of the episodes we've had this week. I'm sure you have a lot of takeaway from that. I'm John Merkel. I'll see you at 10 p.m. for the stock market report.